Booze, beer, bars, and whiskey. Growing up in the bar. Hello, y'all. I'm Dianna, Brianne. I don't give advice, suggestions, information, recommendations. I do share with you my perspective on different topics. I hope you like, share, subscribe. All 5 channel names are pinned to the top of the comment section or description box below. And all 5 channels have new and fresh content. So what am I talking about? Growing up in the bar. Well, you know, I don't go to bars because, well, unless it's like for bar food. I do love some bars, especially when we go to the beach. I love bar food. Some of the bar food is delicious, although we are very healthy eaters, and so normally I don't do that anymore. And I'm not a drinker, so that doesn't appeal to me either. And I've talked about in another video, or maybe other videos, about why I don't really like to be around alcohol. Now, I'm not opposed to someone having a glass of wine or something like that with dinner, but when people drink too much. And part of that came from when my mom remarried, and like I said, I had a wonderful and amazing stepfather later on, and I reunited with my father and my biological father as well later on, and it was all good. But there was a stepfather along the way who drank a lot at that time. I think later in life he became rehabilitated, but during the time my mother was married to him, he drank quite heavily, and I did not like that, because for my mother to get the paycheck from him on Friday nights from his work so he didn't spend it all on booze, she had to go sit in the bar. And because I was little, I ended up having to go too. They'd give me a big bag of quarters, and I would play the jukebox, and usually it was These Boots Are Made for Walking. I think they wanted to throw us out after a period of time because I played the song so many times over and over and over. These Boots Are Made for Walking, which was back in the 60s, and probably that was a very appropriate song because I wanted to walk right out of there. I didn't like the bars. And when we would go visit his relatives, and so when we would go see his relatives, his stepfather's relatives, it was way out in the country, and they all drank. And I really dreaded going there as a child. I did not want to go there. Absolutely did not want to go there. They had this old house and didn't have TVs or anything, so I had a room to myself upstairs, and I remember just staying in the room while everybody drank. My mother didn't drink, but she went out there because, well, it was the stepfather's family. And so we went out there, and they would all be drinking downstairs, minus my mother, who didn't drink. She was always the designated driver when they went out to the bar. So I would just stay in the room and watch the rain, and, you know, it was kind of a cold, drizzly place, and didn't like it. And I'd look out the window just wishing someone would rescue me, so to speak. And then we'd be saying, hey, we're all going to the bar, so we'd all have to load up in cars. And there was always a designated driver, which was my mother. And we would go to the bar, and then if there were the other kids with us, then I would have someone to play with. But it usually was outside the bar. We'd play in the parking lot or something like that, or somewhere low, you know, close by. But when we had to sit in the bar, I just absolutely detested that the smell of beer, the smell of whiskey, booze, sitting in the bar. And often my mother had to go to the bars and sit, like on a Tuesday night, a Friday night, or whenever we went out to his family's. My mother's marriage didn't last long, thank goodness, and then that was it. And then she married the other stepfather, who was amazing and wonderful. I do believe that that particular stepfather later became religious and turned his life around. I do truly do believe that, and I'm so glad for him. But at that time period, he was drunk a lot of the time. It made my life very, very difficult. He was very quiet when he didn't drink, but when he was drunk, he was very loud and obnoxious. And so my aversion to booze and bars and all of that and being drunk, it comes from that period of time. And I used to go to the payphone because at one point we didn't have a phone. And back when we all had rotary phones and party lines, but I used to go to the payphone with a dime, and it used to cost a dime for unlimited talk locally. And I'd call my grandma and I would talk for a long time. And my grandmother was my source of inspiration, motivation. She would read the Bible to me, and she really laid the foundation for me in so many ways. And I was so grateful for my grandmother and how she did lay that foundation, a solid foundation. And it really got me through that very difficult time of living in a household with a drunk, the town drunk. It was really challenging and difficult. And, my mother married him. That back in the 60s, that was kind of what people did. They had to get married to survive. And that was the first person that really, she met that would get married, and she married him. And unfortunately, he was the town drunk. But fortunately, she was a great mom, and she, left him. But I remember that I just hated the smell of all those cigarettes and all that, the booze. My mom didn't smoke or drink, but he did. The heavy smoking and the booze and the beer and sitting in the bar stools. And these boots are made for walking was my theme song. These boots are made for walking. That's just what they'll do, or something like that. And that was back in the 60s. And we knew every little honky-tonk bar, as they were called. They were called honky-tonks, country bars, usually kind of built in someone's, what used to be their house or part of their house, an old house. And they were local in those kind of small towns. And so we grew up around that, and we grew up around people who drank a lot and all that, and they'd come back home drunk. Everybody would be piled in the car while they had a designated driver, which was my mom. And she'd bring them all back, and they'd all be drunk, and sometimes they'd all fight together, everybody get in a big fight, and I just hid in my room, and I talked about that in another video, and it was not a pleasant experience. And so if you are a person who drinks and you're a drunk, and especially if you're an obnoxious one, maybe you really need to rethink your life. And if you're someone living with someone like that, maybe you really need to rethink things in your approach and how you're going to go forward, because it's not a pleasant experience, especially for a young child. It's one decision when an adult makes a decision that affects them. It's another decision when an adult makes a decision that affects their children, as it did with me. But my mom got out of the marriage as quickly as she could, and she did. So she made the right decision. And yet she made a wrong decision by marrying somebody that she probably didn't know all that well, who had a tremendous drinking problem. So no to me with bars, booze, bars, beer, drunkenness, and whiskey. I just like iced tea with no sugar. From my house to yours, may God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe, and I hope to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.